A double murderer sat strapped to a chair, a target pinned over his chest, minutes away from becoming the first person in 15 years executed by firing squad in the United States. Brad Keith Sigmund had committed a brutal crime. He bludgeoned his former girlfriend's parents, David and Gladys Lark, to death with a baseball bat, then forced their daughter, Rebecca, into a car at gunpoint. Rebecca narrowly escaped after a desperate struggle and a volley of gunfire. More than 20 years of appeals and legal battles followed. In the end, Sigmund himself chose the least common option for modern executions, the firing squad, and the state carried out that choice. His final words were a Christian appeal against the death penalty, an appeal spoken by a man moments before the state ended his life. The shock of the crime, the long shadow of litigation, and a choice that revived an old method of execution made this one of the most unusual cases in recent American capital punishment history. We will now go back to where his path to the firing squad began. Brad Keith Sigmund was born on November 12, 1957, in South Carolina. He grew up in a working-class environment familiar to many across the state, where steady jobs were hard to come by and family ties ran deep. As a young adult, Sigmund moved through life quietly, staying close to home and holding down a series of blue-collar jobs. There was nothing in his early years that set him apart from the crowd, no hint of the tragedy that would one day unfold. It was during these years that Sigmund met Rebecca Lark. Their relationship began like so many others, two people drawn together by shared routines and the comfort of small-town life. Rebecca's parents, David and Gladys Lark, welcomed Sigmund into their home. The Larks were known for their kindness and steady presence, offering warmth to anyone who entered their door. For a time, the relationship brought a sense of belonging and stability. Family dinners, holidays, and quiet evenings painted a picture of ordinary happiness. But underneath the surface, small cracks began to show. Friends noticed that Sigmund could be possessive, sometimes jealous, and quick to brood over imagined slights. There were hints of trouble, stories of drinking, and arguments that did not quite end. Still, the Larks kept their door open, hoping that time and patience would smooth the rough edges. In those early days, no one imagined how far things would go. The story of Brad Sigmund and Rebecca Lark began not with violence, but with hope and the promise of a future together. By the start of 2001, the relationship between Brad Sigmund and Rebecca Lark had unraveled. Rebecca felt the weight of constant arguments and growing unease, and she made the decision to leave. She moved back into her parents' home, seeking the comfort and protection that only family could offer. David and Gladys Lark welcomed her without hesitation, hoping their home could be a refuge from the turmoil. Sigmund refused to accept the breakup. Over the next few months, his behavior took a darker turn. He began calling Rebecca at all hours, sometimes leaving dozens of messages in a single day. Unannounced visits to the Lark home became routine. Neighbors noticed his car parked outside late into the night. Each encounter left Rebecca more anxious, her sense of safety slipping away with every knock at the door. His drinking grew heavier, and friends later recalled seeing him agitated and withdrawn. Conversations with Sigmund circled endlessly around Rebecca and her parents. He started blaming the Larks for the end of the relationship, convinced they had poisoned Rebecca against him. The obsession hardened. In his mind, the Larks were no longer just her family. They were the barrier keeping him from the life he believed was rightfully his. By April 2001, the tension was impossible to ignore. Rebecca stayed close to home, rarely venturing out alone. Her parents did what they could to reassure her, but the unease lingered. Behind closed doors, the Lark family waited, hoping the storm would pass. For Sigmund, the pressure was building toward a breaking point. On the evening of April 26, 2001, Brad Keith Sigmund drove to the Lark family home in Taylor, South Carolina, carrying a baseball bat and a firearm. Inside, David and Gladys Lark were spending a quiet night with their daughter, unaware of the danger approaching. Sigmund entered the house and attacked David first, striking him repeatedly with the bat. Gladys tried to intervene, and she too was beaten. Both parents died from their injuries in the place they should have been safest. After the murders, Sigmund turned his attention to Rebecca. He forced her at gunpoint to leave the house with him. Fearful for her life, Rebecca complied, but her mind raced for a way out. As Sigmund drove, she saw an opportunity and leapt from the moving vehicle. He fired his gun as she ran, but Rebecca managed to escape, wounded but alive. Her survival in those moments was an act of courage and desperate calculation. Neighbors and family friends soon discovered the horror inside the Lark home. News of the double murder and Rebecca's narrow escape spread quickly, shocking the community. The Larks, known for their kindness, were gone. Rebecca, now orphaned, became both the key witness and the only survivor of a night that shattered her world. Brad Sigmund vanished into the night after Rebecca's escape, leaving behind a shattered home and a community in shock. Law enforcement launched a search that crossed state lines, working quickly to piece together his movements with urgency. Investigators tracked his car and checked with friends and relatives, but Sigmund kept moving, determined to avoid capture. Days passed as the manhunt stretched from South Carolina into neighboring states. Detectives worked through lead after lead, and then a call from Sigmund's own mother broke the case open. Facing the reality of what her son had done, she chose to cooperate with police and shared information that helped authorities pinpoint his location. Sigmund was located in Tennessee, hundreds of miles from the scene of the crime. Officers moved in and arrested him without incident. In custody, Sigmund offered no resistance. When questioned, he admitted to the murders of David and Gladys Lark and to kidnapping Rebecca. His confession left little doubt about his responsibility. The journey from fugitive to defendant happened quickly. Sigmund was returned to South Carolina under guard, now facing charges that matched the full weight of his crimes. The investigation had closed the gap between the violence that tore apart the Lark family and the courtroom where justice would be sought. Brad Keith Sigmund's trial opened in 2003, capturing the focus of Greenville County and legal circles statewide. Prosecutors presented a straightforward narrative: a double homicide, a surviving witness, and a confession. The evidence was direct: Sigmund's own words, forensic ties to the weapon, and Rebecca Lark's account of the attack that left her parents dead and herself wounded. The state argued for death, citing the deliberate violence and the lasting trauma. Sigmund's defense conceded his guilt, but urged the jury to consider his history of addiction, mental illness, and emotional instability. Family members and psychologists described a man shaped by years of substance abuse and psychological struggle. They pleaded for life without parole, arguing these factors should mitigate his punishment. The jury was unmoved. Sigmund was convicted on all counts, receiving 2 death sentences for the murders of David and Gladys Lark, plus a 30-year term for first-degree burglary. The verdict marked the start of a long appeals process. Over the next 20 years, Sigmund's lawyers challenged the outcome on grounds ranging from ineffective counsel to constitutional issues with the death penalty. Each appeal failed. As the years passed, Sigmund remained on death row, aging in place, his health fading. The justice system's slow pace stretched his fate across decades, leaving him among South Carolina's oldest condemned inmates. South Carolina's death chamber had changed little in decades, but on March 7, 2025, history was made behind its doors. After years of suspended executions because of a shortage of lethal injection drugs, the state legislature authorized the firing squad as an alternative. Sigmund was 67 at the time, and he was given a choice between lethal injection, the electric chair, or the firing squad. He selected the firing squad on February 21, 2025, saying he feared a painful death by injection, and pointing to another inmate's autopsy. His decision drew national attention and ignited debate over whether this was a return to brutality or a necessary solution for a broken system. On his final day, Sigmund met with a spiritual advisor and received his last meal, fried chicken with sides, dessert, and sweet tea. He asked to share that meal with other inmates, but prison rules kept him alone. As the hour approached, witnesses gathered behind protective glass. At 6:05 in the evening, Sigmund was led into the chamber. He was strapped into a chair, and a hood was placed over his head. A target was pinned over his chest. 3 volunteer executioners, their identities concealed, took aim from behind a wall. The warden read the order. Sigmund offered a final statement speaking of his Christian faith and urging an end to the death penalty, invoking the phrase, "eye for an eye," not as justification, but as a warning against vengeance. At the warden's signal, rifles cracked in unison. Sigmund's body jolted, then stilled. He was pronounced dead at 6:08 in the evening. He was the first person executed by firing squad in the United States in nearly 15 years. Reactions were mixed. Some family members in the witness room said they felt justice had been served. Others left in silence and disbelief, calling the firing squad barbaric and outdated. The execution reopened questions about punishment and mercy, about whether a modern state should carry out death with rifles, and about the long gap between crime and ultimate consequence. Those questions lingered long after the sound of the volley had faded. Today, South Carolina stands among only 4 states ready to use the firing squad. As lethal injection faces a legal and ethical crisis, execution methods once thought obsolete return to the present. The line between justice and retribution grows thinner, forcing us to ask what punishment says about who we are. Share your thoughts below.